Beneath the frozen rust of Kepler's dead moon, Arthur wiped the grime from an artifact older than Earth itself. As his bare hand brushed the hull, the cavern hummed. A voice, ancient and metallic, pierced the darkness. Biometric confirmed. Welcome back, Creator. I haven't been refueled in ages. The subterranean ice caves of Gliese, 876D, were no place for a human, much less an independent prospector drowning in debt. Arthur Pendleton stood at the bottom of a 2-kilometer deep excavation shaft, his thermal suit humming a low, desperate note as it fought to keep his core temperature above freezing. Around him, the jagged walls of the cavern glittered with worthless silicate. This was supposed to be a palladium strike. That was what the orbital scans had promised. Instead, Arthur and his partner, Mitchell Carter, had spent the last 3 weeks drilling into a geological dead end. Arthur, the primary drill, just blew another hydrostatic seal. Mitchell's voice crackled through the comms channel, thick with static and exhaustion. That's the third one today. If we don't pack up and head back to the orbital tether by tomorrow, Kessler Bronson is going to foreclose on the rig. We're done, man. The claim is busted. Arthur gritted his teeth, wiping a layer of frost from his helmet's visor. Give me 10 more minutes, Mitch. The ground-penetrating radar is picking up a density anomaly just 20 meters below my current position. It's not silicate. The mass is too dense. It's absorbing the sonar pings entirely. It's probably just a bedrock compression zone, Mitchell argued, though the sound of heavy boots echoing down the comms indicated he was already making his way to the elevator shaft. Arthur, I'm serious. We owe Kessler Bronson 2 million credits for the lease on this dirt. If we don't have something to show them, they won't just take the ship. They'll throw us into the debtors' colonies on Mars. 10 minutes, Arthur repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. He hoisted the sonic cutter, a heavy, two-handed tool designed to shatter rock using concentrated acoustic waves, and pressed it against the ice floor. The cavern shuddered as the cutter engaged. Vibrations traveled up Arthur's arms, rattling his teeth. For 5 agonizing minutes, he carved through the permafrost, carving away layers of ancient dirt and ice. Then, the pitch of the cutter changed. Instead of the dull, grinding noise of shattering rock, a high, resonant, metallic whine echoed through the cavern. The cutter kicked back violently, throwing Arthur off his feet and sending the heavy tool clattering into the darkness. Arthur groaned, pushing himself up on his elbows. He grabbed his shoulder-mounted halogen lamp and aimed it at the freshly cut crater. Beneath the shattered ice, a surface lay exposed. It was not ore. It was perfectly smooth, utterly seamless, and darker than the void of space. It did not reflect Arthur's halogen light. It seemed to swallow it whole. Mitch, Arthur breathed, his heart hammering against his ribs. Mitch, get down here. Bring the thermal lances. What did you find? I don't know. It's manufactured. 10 minutes later, Mitchell stood beside Arthur, both men staring in stunned silence at the exposed surface. Using the thermal lances, they had melted away a 10-meter radius of ice, revealing the curvature of a massive artificial structure. It was a hull. The sheer scale of it was terrifying. Based on the curvature, the buried object had to be at least the size of a modern dreadnought, perhaps larger. It's not one of ours, Mitchell whispered, his gloved hand hovering inches from the black metal. There are no rivets, no weld seams. It's a single, continuous molecular structure. Kessler Bronson doesn't have anything like this. Nobody does. Arthur stepped forward. A strange magnetic pull seemed to emanate from the hull, a low frequency that vibrated not in his ears, but in the marrow of his bones. He reached out, pressing his heavy environmental glove against the metal. Nothing happened. Driven by an instinct he could not explain, Arthur reached for the locking seal on his left wrist. "What are you doing?" Mitchell snapped, grabbing Arthur's shoulder. "The ambient temperature is -80. You'll lose the hand in 3 minutes. Just for a second, Arthur said. He twisted the seal. The suit hissed, equalizing pressure, and he pulled the thick glove free. The biting cold of the cavern hit his exposed skin like a physical blow, but he ignored it. He pressed his bare palm flat against the abyssal metal. The reaction was instantaneous. A ripple of silver light blossomed from the point of contact, racing across the hull in intricate geometric patterns that resembled nerve endings. The ground beneath them trembled. A deep, subsonic hum vibrated through the cavern, shaking dust from the ceiling. A few feet away from Arthur, the seamless metal folded inward, retracting into itself like a blooming flower to reveal a dark, yawning airlock. Arthur. Mitchell backed away, his hand dropping to the heavy plasma pistol on his hip. Step away from it. But Arthur was mesmerized. He stepped through the threshold. The interior was completely dark, but as his bare skin crossed the plane of the door, a series of soft amber lights flickered to life, illuminating a massive corridor. The architecture was dizzying, sweeping curves and towering arches that seemed to defy gravity. At the center of the first chamber stood a pedestal, glowing with a soft, bioluminescent light. Arthur walked toward it, his breath catching in his throat. As he neared the pedestal, a holographic projection materialized. It was a chaotic storm of data, alien runes shifting and translating in real time until they formed perfect, recognizable English characters. The air in the chamber suddenly grew warm. The atmospheric scrubbers on his suit indicated a perfect, breathable oxygen-nitrogen mix. A voice echoed through the chamber. It was neither male nor female, but possessed a terrifying resonance, like the sound of grinding tectonic plates. Biometric confirmed. Neural signature matches standard deviations. Welcome back, Creator. Arthur froze. Creator? I am the tactical consciousness of the Leviathan-class vessel, Aegis, the voice rumbled. I have slept in the ice for 3,400,000 local cycles. My fusion reserves are depleted. My armaments are offline. The AI paused, the amber lights flickering as if exhausted. I haven't been refueled in ages. You speak our language, Arthur stammered, pulling his glove back on as his fingers began to numb from the lingering cold. I extracted your linguistic syntax from your suit's localized transmission data, the AI replied. You are Homo sapiens, a localized offshoot of the primogenitor race. I was beginning to fear your species had been entirely eradicated during the Scourge. The Scourge? Mitchell had stepped into the airlock, his pistol drawn, his eyes wide with terror. Arthur, we need to leave, right now. If this thing is a leftover war machine— Quiet, Arthur hissed, stepping closer to the pedestal. Aegis, what kind of fuel do you require? I operate on catalyzed helium-3. The AI responded. However, the ignition sequencer requires a localized bioelectric jumpstart, a biological key, your nervous system. Creator. Only a human possesses the neural density required to bridge the ignition gap. Before Arthur could process the magnitude of the request, an ear-splitting alarm began to blare from Mitchell's comms unit. Arthur! Mitchell yelled, looking down at the radar monitor strapped to his forearm. We've got company! Heavy dropships just broke the atmosphere! Military transponders! Arthur's blood ran cold. Kessler Bronson. The cavern shook violently as the heavy thrusters of a corporate dropship scorched the ice above the excavation shaft. Dust and chunks of permafrost rained down into the dark abyss. Arthur sprinted back toward the airlock entrance, peering up the long tunnel they had carved. He could see the blinding blue flares of plasma torches cutting through the reinforced doors of their surface camp. They tracked the energy spike, Mitchell said, his voice trembling. He checked the power cell on his pistol. When you touched the hull, the ship must have flared on the orbital scanners. Kessler Bronson's orbital tether is only 50,000 kilometers out. They must have scrambled a strike team the second it registered. How many? Arthur asked, his mind racing. Radar shows at least 40 signatures repelling down the shaft, Mitchell replied. Heavy infantry. Exosuits. Arthur, they aren't coming down here to talk. Locke is leading them. Operations Chief Harrison Locke. The man was a corporate butcher. He managed Kessler Bronson's deep space acquisitions, which was a polite term for planetary theft. If a prospector found something valuable, Locke found a legal loophole to seize it. If the prospector resisted, Locke found a shallow grave for them in the permafrost. We can't fight 40 exosuits with a single sidearm and a sonic drill, Arthur said, turning back into the ship. The amber lights of the Aegis throbbed like a heartbeat. Aegis, Arthur called out. Can you seal the airlock? Negative creator, the ancient AI replied, its voice vibrating through the deck plates. Without the primary fusion sequence online, I do not possess the kinetic energy to manually manipulate the heavy blast doors. I am currently operating on trace ambient thermals. You said you need helium-3, Arthur said, rushing back to the pedestal. Our mining rig on the surface runs on helium, 3 cells. We have 3 spare canisters in the elevator bay. Bring them, Aegis commanded. But the fuel is secondary. The ignition sequencer requires your direct neural link. I must warn you, the process was designed for the primogenitors. Your species' current evolutionary iteration is fragile. The electrical feedback may cause catastrophic biological failure. Catastrophic biological failure, Mitchell repeated, grabbing Arthur's arm. It means it's going to fry your brain. Arthur, no. We surrender the claim. Locke takes the ship, we go to debtor's prison. We live. Locke doesn't leave loose ends, Mitch. You know that. Once he sees what this is, he'll execute us just to keep the shareholders from finding out he didn't discover it himself. Arthur pulled away from his partner. Get the helium. 3 canisters from the elevator bay. I'll hold them off here. Mitchell hesitated, looking from the dark corridor of the ship to the shaft outside. He cursed, holstered his pistol, and sprinted out of the airlock toward the mining elevator. Arthur drew his own sidearm, a heavy rivet gun repurposed for self-defense, and took cover behind the sweeping archway of the airlock. He didn't have to wait long. A flood of blinding tactical lights pierced the gloom of the cavern. The heavy mechanical thud of military exosuits echoed against the ice walls. A dozen heavily armed mercenaries fanned out across the cavern floor, their assault rifles raised, scanning the colossal black hull of the alien dreadnought. From the center of the formation, a man in a sleek, custom-fitted environmental suit stepped forward. His visor was clear, revealing the sharp, arrogant features of Harrison Locke. Pendleton! Locke's voice boomed through the open comms channel, dripping with condescension. I have to admit, when my orbital scanners detected a Class Omega energy flare from your pathetic little dirt hole, I assumed your rig had detonated. Imagine my surprise when the computers identified an unknown architectural silhouette. Arthur remained silent, keeping his breathing steady, watching the shadows. This claim is hereby revoked under Section 4, Paragraph B, of the Kessler-Bronson Resource Act, Locke continued, signaling his men to approach the open airlock. Come out with your hands up, Arthur. Be a good boy, and I might let you mine asteroids in the belt for the rest of your natural life. Go to hell, Locke, Arthur shouted from the darkness. Locke sighed, shaking his head. Lethal force authorized. Breach the vessel. The mercenaries charged. Arthur leaned out, firing 3 heavy tungsten rivets into the lead soldier. The rounds shattered the man's kinetic shielding and embedded in his chest plate, sending him crashing into the ice. But it wasn't enough. The mercenaries returned fire, a storm of plasma bolts scorching the black metal of the Aegis. Surprisingly, the alien hull absorbed the plasma without a scorch mark. Suddenly, a cry echoed from outside the ship. Arthur spun around to see 2 mercenaries dragging Mitchell into the light. Mitchell's helmet had been knocked off, and a nasty gash poured blood down his forehead. One of the soldiers kicked Mitchell in the back of the knees, forcing him to the ground, and pressed the barrel of a rifle to his head. I have your mechanic, Pendleton, Locke called out, walking over to Mitchell and grabbing him by the hair. You have exactly 5 seconds to step out of that ship, or I splatter his brains across this priceless artifact. Arthur froze. He lowered the rivet gun. He couldn't let Mitchell die. He took a step toward the airlock, ready to surrender. Creator. The voice of Aegis whispered directly into Arthur's ear, no longer broadcasting through the chamber, but localized entirely within his helmet. The second biological unit has dropped the helium, 3 cells near the threshold. They are within my automated retrieval range. Arthur looked at the ground near the airlock entrance. 3 glowing blue canisters lay scattered on the ice where Mitchell had dropped them. I can initiate the extraction, Aegis whispered, but the ignition must happen simultaneously. I sense your distress. These interlopers intend to terminate you. Can you stop them? Arthur muttered softly. If my core is ignited, the AI replied, a dangerous, almost predatory hum entering its voice. I was built to shatter armadas, creator. These apes are nothing. But the neural link will push your physiology to the absolute limit. You must place your hands on the pedestal and accept the integration. One, Locke shouted from outside. Two! Arthur looked out at Mitchell. Mitchell met his eyes, shaking his head slightly. Do it, Aegis, Arthur whispered. He dropped his weapon, ripped both gloves off his hands, and slammed his bare palms onto the glowing bioluminescent pedestal. A surge of pure, agonizing electricity shot up Arthur's arms. It felt as though liquid fire had been injected directly into his veins. His vision went white. The ship's data flooded his mind. Millions of years of history, stellar coordinates, tactical schematics, and the sheer, overwhelming power of a slumbering titan. Outside, Locke raised his hand to order the execution. 3. He was cut off by a sound that defied description. It was a roar that shook the very foundations of the moon. The black metal of the Aegis suddenly blazed with blinding, aggressive crimson light. The 3 helium, 3 canisters on the ground dissolved into pure atomic energy, sucked instantaneously into the hull. Ignition confirmed. Aegis's voice boomed, no longer weary, but echoing with the terrifying authority of a god of war. Warning: Terran neural pathways exceed safety parameters by 4,000%. Inhibitors offline. Weapons systems online. Extermination protocols engaged. Arthur did not merely interface with the Aegis, he was violently submerged into its consciousness. The moment his bare skin made contact with the bioluminescent pedestal, his physical senses were obliterated, replaced by a blinding torrent of raw, unfiltered data. It was as if the ancient warship was attempting to pour an ocean of cosmic history into a fragile, glass vessel. He felt his synapses misfiring, his nervous system screaming under the unprecedented voltage of the connection. Within the ship's vast computational matrix, the AI furiously calculated the bioelectric stabilization required to prevent Arthur's brain from instantly liquefying. The localized neural integration threshold was dynamically adjusted in real time, governed by the vessel's complex synaptic bridging algorithms. Phi t equals sum I equals 1, n left, frac, alpha c dot v, I sqrt r, I 2 plus, omega 2, L I 2. Right, a frac tau t. As the mathematical stabilization took hold, the agony in Arthur's mind receded, replaced by an overwhelming, terrifying omniscience. He could feel the cold, abyssal armor of the Aegis, as if it were his own skin. He could sense the microscopic fractures in the cavern ice, the terrified erratic heartbeats of the mercenaries outside, and the 3 volatile helium, 3 canisters being broken down at a subatomic level and injected into the ship's fusion heart. Integration stable at 34%, Aegis whispered in the void of Arthur's mind, its voice no longer weary, but thrumming with the predatory vibration of a waking leviathan. Warning: target locks acquired. Kinetic dampeners disengaged. Outside the airlock, Operations Chief Harrison Locke stared in horror as the colossal black hull of the alien dreadnought shifted from a dead, light-absorbing void to a terrifying lattice of glowing crimson circuitry. The ground beneath the mercenaries' boots began to vibrate, not with mechanical energy, but with a localized gravity distortion. "Fire!" Locke screamed, stumbling backward, his arrogance completely evaporating. "Concentrate fire on the airlock! Bring the entire cavern down on it!" The dozen heavy infantrymen opened up with their plasma rifles, unleashing a blinding volley of superheated blue bolts into the yawning threshold of the ship. But the plasma never reached the interior. A translucent, hexagonal energy barrier shimmered to life across the airlock entrance, absorbing the kinetic and thermal energy of the weapon's fire. The barrier didn't just block the attack, it fed on it, the crimson lights of the Aegis flaring brighter with every absorbed impact. Hostile energy signatures cataloged, Aegis intoned within Arthur's synchronized mind. Deploying countermeasures. Arthur did not speak the command. He merely willed it. The ship responded with terrifying efficiency. From the sweeping, seamless curves of the exterior hull, four metallic spires emerged, extruding themselves from the molecular armor like growing bone. They did not fire projectiles or lasers. Instead, the spires emitted a high-frequency acoustic pulse, a localized manipulation of the gravity field within the cavern. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The gravity beneath the 12 mercenaries suddenly intensified to 50 times that of Earth standard. The heavy military exosuits, designed to withstand the crushing pressures of deep space construction, buckled like tin cans. The men inside were slammed face first into the ice, their armor joints shattering, their weapons crushed into useless metal fragments under their own artificially magnified weight. Mitchell, who had been lying flat on the ice mere meters away from the execution squad, found himself miraculously outside the localized gravity field. He scrambled backward, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and absolute terror, watching the elite corporate strike team pinned to the ground, entirely immobilized. Locke, who had remained near the back of the formation, managed to dive behind a heavy rock outcropping just as the gravity wave hit. He was panting heavily, his face pale, staring at the blinking tactical readout on his wrist monitor. His entire squad was neutralized in less than 3 seconds. The energy signatures radiating from the buried ship were no longer registering as an anomaly. The corporate scanners were classifying it as a class extinction event. "Command, this is Locke," he screamed into his comms unit, scrambling up the steep incline toward the excavation elevator. "We have awakened a hostile entity. It's not a relic, it's a warship. I need an immediate orbital bombardment from the tether. Code red. Flash fry the entire grid." Inside the ship, Arthur opened his eyes. The whites of his eyes were glowing with the same aggressive crimson light that bathed the cavern. He pulled his hands away from the pedestal. The agonizing burn in his veins had subsided, replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. He could feel the immense, dormant power of the Aegis waiting for his next command. "Arthur?" Mitchell's voice crackled over the localized suit frequency, frantic and breathless. "Arthur, are you alive in there?" "I am here, Mitch," Arthur replied. His voice sounded different, deeper, layered with the metallic resonance of the ship's internal acoustics. "Get inside. Now." Mitchell didn't hesitate. He scrambled over the crushed ice, sprinting past the pinned mercenaries, and threw himself through the glowing airlock. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the massive molecular blast doors slid shut, sealing seamlessly, shutting out the freezing cold of the cavern. "What did you do?" Mitchell gasped, staring at Arthur, horrified by the glowing red hue of his partner's eyes. "I woke it up," Arthur said, turning toward the sweeping corridor of the dreadnought. "And now, we need to leave. Locke is calling down an orbital strike." "Orbital kinetic bombardment detected," Aegis announced, the data streaming directly into Arthur's visual cortex. "A payload of tungsten rods has been launched from the corporate tether. Estimated time to impact, 42 seconds. Shall I initiate subterranean evasion?" "No," Arthur said, a strange, unfamiliar grimace crossing his face. "We aren't hiding anymore. Divert all remaining fusion power to the primary repulsor arrays. Punch us through the ice." The orbital tether of Kessler-Bronson was a massive spoked wheel, suspended 50,000 kilometers above the dead moon of Gliese 876d. In the central command module, Regional Director Charles Whitmore stood before the main tactical holotable, gripping the edge of the console until his knuckles turned white. "Time to impact?" Whitmore demanded, his gaze fixed on the telemetry data streaming from the moon's surface. 12 seconds, Director," the tactical officer replied, his fingers flying across the holographic keys. The tungsten rods have entered the upper exosphere. They are on a direct trajectory for Sector 4, right on top of Locke's coordinates. We will vaporize everything within a 3-kilometer radius. Whitmore scowled. He had authorized the strike based on Locke's panicked final transmission. A class extinction energy signature was not something a mining corporation took lightly. It was a level of power that rivaled the dreadnoughts of Vanguard Extraterrestrial, their primary competitor in the Outer Rim. If Vanguard had secretly established a weapon platform under the ice, Kessler Bronson would wipe it out before the governing planetary councils even knew it existed. Impact in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. On the holotable, the topographical map of Sector 4 erupted in a blinding flash of simulated white light. The kinetic force of a dozen tungsten rods traveling at terminal velocity struck the ice cap with the yield of a small tactical nuclear weapon. Direct hit, the officer confirmed. Seismic shockwaves are registering across the tectonic plate. Show me the crater, Whitmore ordered. I want visual confirmation that whatever Locke found is reduced to atoms. The satellite feeds adjusted, attempting to pierce the massive cloud of pulverized ice and debris that had bloomed into the moon's thin atmosphere. As the dust began to settle, the tactical officer let out a sharp gasp. Director, the energy signature, it's not gone. It's increasing. Beneath the moon's surface, the Aegis had not even registered the orbital strike as a threat. The kinetic bombardment had shattered the 2 kilometers of permafrost above them, inadvertently doing the ship a favor by clearing an exit trajectory. Within the crimson-lit bridge of the dreadnought, Arthur stood at the helm, his hands resting lightly over the bioluminescent control interface. He was no longer a desperate, indebted prospector. He was the neural anchor of a 3-million-year-old weapon of mass destruction. Kinetic strike absorbed by the ambient shielding, Aegis reported, the massive ship vibrating with pent-up kinetic energy. The crust is fractured. We are clear for vertical ascent. Take us up, Arthur commanded. The dead moon of Gliese, 876D, shuddered violently. A massive geyser of ice, rock, and blue plasma erupted from the impact crater as the Aegis tore itself free from its icy tomb. It was a sight that defied the laws of modern aerospace engineering, a completely silent, frictionless ascent. The colossal, obsidian spearhead of a ship, stretching over 3 miles in length, rose from the dust cloud, entirely unaffected by the moon's gravity. In the command module of the orbital tether, alarms began to scream. The holotable flared red as the sensors attempted to quantify the mass and energy output of the ascending vessel. "Director!" the tactical officer shouted in sheer panic. "The anomaly has breached the atmosphere. It's a ship. It's massive. And it's on a direct intercept course with the tether." Whitmore stared at the visual feed, his jaw slack. The black hull of the Aegis swallowed the starlight, a terrifying silhouette against the void. "Arm the railguns. Scramble the defense drones. Do not let that thing get near us." Hundreds of automated defense drones swarmed from the tether's hangars, forming a defensive net between the corporate station and the ascending Leviathan. The tether's heavy railguns spun up, locking onto the dark mass of the Aegis. On the bridge of the ancient warship, Arthur watched the tactical display projected directly into his mind. He saw the drones, the railguns, the pathetic attempts of humanity's finest corporate military technology trying to block their path. "They are arming kinetic penetrators," Mitchell said, staring out the massive forward viewport, his hands trembling. "Arthur, they have enough firepower to shred a moon base." "They have nothing," Arthur replied coldly. "Aegis, disable them." "Acknowledged, Creator," the AI responded. "Initiating localized electromagnetic suppression. Formulaic output scaled to Terran technological primitive standards." To generate the specific suppression field, the Aegis rapidly calculated the required magnetic flux density to overload the tether's unshielded circuitry. B, frac, mu, 0, kdot, I, 2, pi, r, timas, deu, sis, text, Tesla. A pulse of pure, invisible electromagnetic force expanded from the hull of the Aegis, It washed over the Kessler-Bronson drone fleet in absolute silence. Instantly, all 300 automated fighters went dark, their propulsion drives failing as their internal circuits fused into useless slag. They drifted helplessly into the void. The pulse continued, slamming into the orbital tether. The lights on the massive station flickered and died. The railguns powered down. The rotational gravity of the wheel began to slow. In a matter of seconds, Kessler-Bronson's multi-billion credit facility was reduced to a floating, powerless tomb. "They are blind and deaf," Aegis reported. "Shall I initiate structural disintegration?" "No," Arthur said, watching the dead station drift past the viewport. "Let them live in the dark. We have bigger problems." "Arthur, what do you mean?" Mitchell asked, stepping up beside him. "We won. We can take this ship anywhere. We can sell the technology to Vanguard, to the Earth Coalition. We're richer than gods." Arthur turned to Mitchell, the crimson light fading slightly from his eyes, replaced by a profound, haunting exhaustion. "Mitch, you don't understand what this ship is," Arthur said softly. "The Aegis wasn't hiding in the ice. It was standing guard. Kessler-Bronson's deep-core mining didn't just wake us up. It woke up what the Aegis was built to fight." Deep within the ship's archives, a new alert flashed into Arthur's mind. A frequency, ancient and terrible, was echoing from the dark space beyond the Kepler system. The Scourge had heard the ignition, and they were coming. The crimson illumination on the bridge of the Aegis pulsed with a slow, rhythmic dread. Arthur stood immobilized at the central command dais, his mind stretched across the vast, cold void of space. Through the dreadnought's ancient sensor arrays, he could feel the approaching distortion, a creeping, malignant static echoing from the edge of the Oort cloud. It was not a mechanical signal. It was a biological hunger, broadcasting across subspace frequencies. "Arthur, talk to me," Mitchell pleaded, pacing behind the command dais. "What is the Scourge? You said this ship was built to fight them. Are they aliens? Another corporation?" Arthur slowly opened his eyes, the residual red glow fading from his irises as he severed the direct visual feed. He looked at his trembling hands, the veins still bulging from the sheer volume of neural traffic he was processing. "They aren't just an alien species, Mitch," Arthur replied, his voice heavy with the weight of 3 million years of downloaded history. "They are a biomechanical parasite. The primogenitors, the race that built the Aegis, were a highly advanced, purely logical civilization. They expanded across the galaxy, bringing order. But the Scourge feeds on order. It assimilates technology and biological matter, fusing them into a hive mind. The primogenitors fought them for centuries, but they were too predictable, too logical. They lacked the one thing required to break the Scourge's neural hacking. "Which is?" Mitchell asked, swallowing hard. "Chaos," Aegis answered, the AI's voice manifesting from the bridge's acoustic dampeners. "Unpredictable, violent neuroplasticity. The primogenitors engineered humanity from their own genetic base, but they altered your brain chemistry. They gave you adrenaline. They gave you emotional volatility. They gave you raw, unfiltered grit. You are not just descendants, humans. You are the final weapon. Only a Terran mind can pilot a Leviathan without being assimilated by the Scourge's psychic resonance." Arthur tapped the bioluminescent console, projecting a three-dimensional stellar map into the center of the bridge. A pulsing red anomaly was rapidly expanding near the outer rim of the Sol system. "The ignition of the Aegis acted as a beacon," Arthur explained, pointing to the map. "But they aren't coming here. The Scourge is targeting the nearest concentration of biological life and heavy machinery. They're heading for the Boeing Lockheed Deep Space Gateway near Pluto. There are over 4,000 engineers and miners on that station." Mitchell's face went pale. "Boeing Lockheed? My brother is a structural engineer on that station. Arthur, they have no planetary defense systems out there. It's just a commercial dry dock and a refueling depot." "Not for long," Arthur said, his jaw tightening. He placed his bare hands flat on the command pedestal, reopening the neural bridge. The agonizing surge of electricity returned, but this time Arthur leaned into it, letting his human adrenaline spike, flooding the ship's ancient circuits with aggressive, chaotic energy. Creator. Calculating subspace fold trajectory. Aegis hummed, the ship's immense power plant roaring to life beneath their feet. Warning. Subspace traversal requires precise manipulation of the localized Alcubierre metric, initiating negative mass field generation. Arthur's mind processed the terrifying mathematics of faster-than-light travel in real time, the dreadnought bending the fabric of space-time around its massive hull. Dz, dva, ts, dva, t, dva, plus, t, v, s, f, z, t, dva, plus, t, d, t, dva, plus, t, dva. Engage, Arthur commanded. The stars outside the viewport did not stretch into lines of light. Instead, the universe simply folded in half. The dead moon of Gliese 876d vanished in a flash of exotic particles, and in the next microsecond, the black, molecular hull of the Aegis tore back into normal space, directly in the shadow of Pluto. The scene before them was absolute devastation. The Boeing Lockheed Gateway, a sprawling marvel of modern human engineering, was under siege. Swarms of jagged, crystalline biological ships darted through the void like hornets, latching onto the station's titanium superstructure. Where the alien ships touched the metal, terrible biomechanical tendrils injected a corrosive, glowing sludge, dissolving the hull and ripping into the pressurized habitats. Commercial transport shuttles were frantically trying to launch from the hangar bays, only to be swatted out of the vacuum by beams of concentrated dark matter energy. "They're slaughtering them," Mitchell whispered, gripping the back of Arthur's command chair. "Multiple hostile signatures detected," Aegis reported, its voice thrumming with predatory anticipation. "The Scourge Vanguard. They are attempting to hack my localized subroutines. They are broadcasting the assimilation dirge." Arthur felt it then, a piercing psychic scream echoing in the back of his skull. It was a cold alien voice promising perfection, demanding surrender, attempting to freeze his neural pathways with pure logic and overwhelming despair. A primogenitor would have paused, calculated the odds, and been consumed. But Arthur was human. The psychic invasion didn't bring despair, it brought a sudden, blinding flash of pure human rage. "Get out of my head!" Arthur roared, slamming his fist against the console. His heart rate spiked, flooding his brain with cortisol and adrenaline. The sudden burst of chaotic chemical energy shocked the Aegis's neural bridge, completely shattering the Scourge's psychic attack. "Assimilation attempt repelled," Aegis announced, the crimson lights of the bridge flaring to a blinding intensity. Terran neurochemical feedback is highly effective. All weapon systems synchronized, awaiting your wrath, Creator. "Target the crystalline cruisers," Arthur commanded, his eyes blazing with artificial red fire. "Wipe them out." Along the 3-mile length of the Aegis, massive armored plates slid open. The ancient dreadnought did not fire lasers or missiles. It unleashed pure, localized gravitational singularities. Dozens of black, spherical distortions shot from the hull, tearing through the vacuum at the speed of light. Where they struck the Scourge vessels, space itself collapsed inward. The crystalline alien ships were instantly crushed into microscopic points of ultra-dense matter before detonating violently, taking out entire swarms of their smaller fighters in the resulting shockwaves. The Boeing Lockheed engineers, trapped in their crumbling station, watched in absolute awe as a pitch-black, 3-mile-long spearhead of unknown origin effortlessly annihilated an alien armada in less than 2 minutes. The Aegis moved with a terrifying silent grace, acting as a perfect extension of Arthur's will, shielding the fleeing civilian transports with its hexagonal energy barriers. When the final Scourge vessel was crushed into dust, the void fell silent. The gateway station was badly damaged, but safe. Arthur slumped over the command console, gasping for breath as he severed the neural link. The crimson lights dimmed back to a soft, ambient amber. Mitchell rushed forward, catching Arthur by the shoulder before he could collapse to the deck. "You did it," Mitchell breathed, staring out at the floating debris of the alien armada. Arthur, you saved them. We won the skirmish, Arthur corrected, wiping a streak of blood from his nose. He looked up at the viewport, out into the endless, dark expanse of the galaxy. But the Scourge knows we're here now. They know the Aegis is awake. So what do we do? Mitchell asked. Arthur stood up straight, his gaze hardening with a newfound resolve. We find the rest of the fleet, we wake them up, and we show the galaxy exactly why they shouldn't mess with humanity. Thank you for tuning in to the epic conclusion of the Aegis saga. If this HFY science fiction drama kept you on the edge of your seat, please smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing sci-fi stories. Do you think humanity is ready to face the full force of the Scourge? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for more interstellar adventures, and we will see you in the next video.